Um, sexual relationships outside of marriage create the same issue. Okay, that rather than an unfolding of sexual exploration between a husband and wife who don't have other encounters, other experiences, they have reference points that they find themselves, well, yeah, this really wasn't quite as exciting as it was with Bill. Okay, so that's what I mean by reference point.
Yeah, and I appreciate that thought, because one of the questions struck me early on that we've got over the week was just talking about the natural reactions many women have when they find out that their significant other struggles with pornography is a loss of self-worth and a feeling like we're not good enough. What is a girl to do when they feel like they must compare themselves to porn stars? And I'm struck by that in the sense that maybe you can speak to this, that the issue is not necessarily a comparison. It's usually the guy issue, and it has nothing to do with the female in the relationship. Would you speak something to that in terms of
I would say
experience in
on
those conversations?
occasion it is kind of tied to what's happening actually in a sexual relationship between a couple. I mean, there are couples where there is an aversion to sex, for example, and I think that does enter in. But man, in the vast majority of cases, and the guys will say this, and I think it's true, it's not about their wives. It's not even a lack of satisfaction. I mean, I've talked with plenty of guys who say, yeah, our sex life as a couple is just fine. It's very enjoyable. I just like the extracurricular kind of fantasy. So it's a typical response. I would say the vast majority of wives I encounter in this issue feel that there must be something about them that is inadequate or undesirable, and they feel like they have to make themselves more desirable or more active or more responsive in order to keep their husband straight. That won't work, because that's really not the issue. In some respects, I think the issue is greed. I just want more, okay? And it's easier to go there. The sad thing is that some guys escalate to the point where the pornography becomes a preferred sexual outlet. So they start pulling back sexually because it's just easier to go to the porn, and one can get precisely what one's looking for by just doing the right kind of search.
Yeah, and certainly it's indicative of, there's brokenness in the relationship, and that has to be addressed and talked and communicated about it. And I think the more that, again, is that most of the time when we counsel couples, that communication, no matter how good you're communicating, there's always better. There's always more that you can do in terms of communicating what it is you desire and how you want to be loved as well as to love. And the more open we are in that communication with our partner, the healthier that relationship will be.
Yeah, I would say that the healing for a couple is always in a couple context. So that the wife, if it's the guy who's been looking at the porn, the wife has a role to play in the recovery, okay, and in the healing from that. But the cause is really primarily about the guy who's looking at the porn.
Yeah, and I think we could do more of that in terms of, I've talked with several guys at times in terms of needing accountability. It is okay, ladies, for you to ask, how you doing? Don't shy away from that question. It may be hard because at first you may be, I'm not sure I want to hear the answer, but hopefully it's prevalent enough that we're accountable with each other in that. The more you can do that, there's no more intimate relationship than the marriage relationship, and that should be one that truth and honor can be held even in the recovery process, so to speak, of recovering a healthy relationship.
That leads to a really good question of what sort of expectations should a significant other set for a struggling addict? Should we expect them to just stop, or is failure sort of given?
Yes.
All right.
The trajectory is not going to be a perfectly smooth, steep line, okay? If somebody is caught up habitually in pornography, they don't have to go back to it, but it's probably likely that they're going to. When I'm working with couples, I discourage spouses from giving their husbands or wives ultimatums, okay? If you do this again, then I'm leaving you, okay? All that does is force it underground, okay? So And besides, she doesn't really know that. She doesn't know whether she's going to want to leave if he does this again, or whether it's going to be 50 more times before she decides she can't tolerate anymore. And so, you know, she'll know when she knows what the limit is. And I say to the I'm saying she and he, because it's usually what the issue is. The guy, I say to, you can't presume that you got any more chances. Okay, so you're taking major risks if you continue. But I think it's foolish to set up a perfection standard as much, and it's much better to talk in terms of how are we going to work through this struggle together, and how are we going to get better. And from that standpoint, it's no different than any other aspect of sin. Okay, and that's the other problem we've done, is we've taken sexual sin as the intolerable one. Okay, and granted, it's significant and it can be a major issue. It is a major issue in relationships. But guess what? We all struggle with doing the things that we said we weren't going to do and breaking that promise again.
So thinking outside of a marriage relationship, is there a point in your dating relationship that it becomes appropriate to share your struggle with your significant other? I mean, where does that start?
Hi, I'm Dan, and I have a problem with porn. No. I think it's like any kind of disclosure. It has to be proper in the context of the level of disclosure in a relationship. Okay. I don't think, you know, on the 5th date, I don't think there's any way to do that. But if the relationship has grown where there's a sharing of struggles, I would say that becomes part of the issue. Probably on the way up the aisle or the way down the aisle is a little too late.
Yeah, definitely late. I mean, that's what the premarital counseling kind of things. Ladies, guys, those are the times to ask those questions. You've got somebody that you're walking with that's helping you towards that, the time of commitment. You want everything out there. It's not some kind of test to see whether we passed and then this minister or whoever it is going to marry you. You want those issues to come out, and that we can be real with each other and say, what's it going to take for us to work on these if you still feel committed to each other in the midst of that, to the depths of that. You don't want to find that out later. I mean, if you do, it's still going to be a journey in terms of overcoming, because to recognize in the vows you're saying for better or for worse. And in our world, we don't take those vows very seriously. And so we need to do a better job of addressing what are those core issues that we face, and that we want to help each other out. You know, one of my favorite lines in a movie is from As Good as It Gets. Have you seen that movie with Jack Nicholson? Where he asks, she's out to a date with him, and he makes some kind of snide comment, and she says back to him, and I thought this was one of the best scenes of it, because she doesn't just let it sit out there. Most of the time, I found this out in my own relationship with Becky. If I said something and I didn't clue in to what I said was hurtful to her, I paid for that for a good week or more without any knowledge of it. Now, we got to a point after about 10 years of marriage we were having a conversation. I remember being at the dining table, and she was saying something that was very serious, and I said something was totally off the deal, and she said, "Stop! You almost lost it right there. I am trying to tell you something. Now listen." I was like, "Oh, okay, I'm listening. I'm sorry. I realize what I just did." Well, the same thing happened in As Good as It Gets. He makes a snide comment, and she says, "That was very hurtful. You had better say something nice right now. Here, I'm walking out." And do you remember what he said? "You make me want to be a better man." I thought, that's exactly what relationships are supposed to be about. We're supposed to be there. As iron sharpens iron, so one person sharpens another. And so our intent here is to help each other with these kind of issues. Yes, it's a serious issue, but it needs to be in an intimate and in a close and trusting relationship is where healing should take place.
Keep in mind, too, that if in 1995, 92, 93% of Christian men had